The snow fell softly that December morning, covering the highway in a blanket of white. David Carter gripped the steering wheel of his old pickup truck, his mind wandering to his daughter Emma's upcoming birthday. At 42, he'd been raising her alone for 6 years now, ever since his wife Sarah passed away from cancer. Money was tight. His job as a mechanic barely covered the bills, but he'd been saving for months to buy Emma that art set she'd been wanting. The road ahead curved gently through the pines when David noticed something unusual. A red car sat at an odd angle on the shoulder, its hazard lights blinking weakly through the falling snow. Steam rose from under the hood. David's instinct was to keep driving. He was already running late for work, but something made him slow down. As he pulled closer, he saw her. A young woman in a red blouse sat slumped in the driver's seat, the door hanging open. Even from a distance, David could see blood on her face. His heart quickened. He pulled over immediately and jumped out, his boots crunching in the fresh snow. Miss, can you hear me?" David approached carefully. The woman appeared to be in her late 20s, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was conscious but dazed, her eyes unfocused. I don't feel well," she whispered, her hand pressed against her ribs. "The car. It just spun out." David noticed her breathing was shallow and irregular. Years of fixing cars had taught him to recognize when something was seriously wrong. "I'm going to call for help, but we need to keep you warm," he said gently. He ran back to his truck and grabbed a thick blanket he kept for emergencies, the one Sarah had made years ago. As he wrapped it around the young woman's shoulders, she looked up at him with frightened eyes. "I can't breathe very well," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. David's hands trembled as he dialed 911. The dispatcher informed him that due to the weather, the ambulance would take at least 40 minutes to arrive. 40 minutes. David looked at the woman again and saw her lips had taken on a bluish tint. He'd seen that color before, when his father had his heart attack. "She didn't have 40 minutes. Ma'am, I'm David." "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep her talking. Rachel Morrison," she managed to say. "Rachel, I need to get you to the hospital. Can you move?" Without waiting for an answer, David made a decision that would change both their lives. He carefully lifted her from the car seat, her weight surprisingly light in his arms. She winced but didn't cry out. The drive to County General usually took 25 minutes. David made it in 15, his truck sliding slightly on the icy roads as he pushed the old engine harder than he should have. All the while, he kept talking to Rachel, asking her about anything he could think of to keep her conscious. "Do you have family?" he asked. "My father," she whispered. "He's going to be so worried." At the hospital, David carried Rachel through the emergency room doors, calling out for help. Nurses rushed over with a gurney, and doctors immediately surrounded her. David stood back, his shirt stained with her blood, his hands shaking from adrenaline. A nurse approached him with a clipboard. "Sir, we need some information." David realized he knew almost nothing about the woman he'd just saved. "Her name is Rachel Morrison. That's all I know. Her car broke down on Highway 9. The nurse nodded and hurried away. David stood there for a moment, suddenly aware that he'd missed his entire shift at the garage. His boss, Mr. Henderson, wasn't a patient man. But as David thought about Rachel's frightened eyes, he knew he'd made the right choice. He was about to leave when a tall man in an expensive overcoat rushed through the entrance, his face pale with worry. "My daughter Rachel Morrison, they called me. Is she here?" David stepped forward. "Sir, she's with the doctors now. She's in good hands." The man turned to David, noticing the blood on his shirt. Were you with her?" "I found her on the highway. I brought her in." The older man's eyes filled with tears. He extended his hand. "James Morrison, you saved my daughter's life. The police called me. They said if you hadn't gotten her here when you did." His voice broke. Over the next 2 hours, David sat with James in the waiting room. They talked about their daughters, about life's unexpected turns, about loss and hope. James shared that he'd lost his wife 10 years ago and that Rachel was all he had left. David talked about Emmett and the challenges of raising her alone. When the doctor finally emerged, the news was serious but hopeful. Rachel had suffered internal injuries in the accident and needed immediate surgery, but she would recover fully. "The gentleman who brought her in saved her life," the doctor said, looking at David. "Another 30 minutes and we would have lost her." James insisted on David's contact information. "I want to properly thank you when this is over," he said. David politely gave him his number, though he didn't expect to hear from him again. In his experience, grateful promises made in hospital waiting rooms often faded once the crisis passed. 3 days later, David was under a Chevy Impala at Henderson's garage when his phone rang. It was James Morrison, inviting him to lunch. David almost declined. His lunch break was only 30 minutes, but something in the older man's voice made him agree. They met at a small diner David could actually afford. Over coffee and sandwiches, James revealed something that left David speechless. He was the CEO of Morrison Industries, the largest manufacturing company in the state, and he wanted to offer David a job. "I need someone I can trust in our facilities management division," James said. "Someone who understands mechanics, who can oversee our equipment maintenance." "The pay is, well, it's considerably more than what you're making now." David's eyes widened. The salary James mentioned was 3 times his current income. "Sir, I don't know what to say. I only did what anyone would have done." "But most people don't do it, David. They drive past. They assume someone else will help. You risked being late for work. You risked your truck on those icy roads. You saw a stranger in trouble and you acted." James leaned forward. "That's the kind of character I want in my company." David accepted the position, and his life transformed in ways he never imagined. Emma got her art set for her birthday, and a lot more besides. But more importantly, David found not just an employer in James Morrison, but a friend. The two men, both single fathers who'd known loss, discovered a kinship that went beyond gratitude. On the anniversary of that snowy December morning, David received a text from Rachel, who had since become like a sister to Emma. It was a photo of her standing beside her fully restored red car, now kept in pristine condition. The message read, "Sometimes the worst days lead to the best things. Thank you for stopping." David smiled, thinking about how one simple choice he had to pull over and help it had changed everything. He taught Emma that kindness was its own reward, never expecting any reward at all. But life, he learned, has a way of coming full circle when you're not looking. As he tucked Emma into bed that night, she asked him the same question she always did. "Dad, how do you know when to help someone?" David kissed her forehead. "You just know, sweetheart. Your heart tells you, and you always listen to your heart."